Thank you very much, Asaf. Round of applause for Asaf. And those pants. Have you seen those pants? Awesome. I wear mom jeans now, so I'm kind of done with that. So today I'll be speaking with Fahim Siddiqui. Fahim Siddiqui is the CIO of Home Depot. Have you heard of Home Depot? Small company, 22 personnel. Uh, so the reason why I want to talk to Fahim today, the thing I want to focus on, it's not so much Home Depot. It's not about Home Depot. It's about a South Asian from Rawalpindi who came to the US, started a bunch of companies, and then ended up as a CIO for a very, very large company. So Home Depot is a very well-known brand. How did that happen? What did he do right? And what can we all learn from? That's the goal. The goal is, again, it's not about the company. It's not about any of those things. It's about the person. And more so beyond the person, what does you hear me? That got in here. And I, as 5 people know me, I work at startups and startups. So I'm always in awe of people who have worked in large organizations and gone to where he has. But he's actually done it both ways. What's in big companies, did a bunch of startups, and then went back to. So that's what I want to learn, and I hope you enjoy this session as well. With that, please join me in welcoming Fahim Siddiqui to the stage.
Let's go all the way back. So I grew up in Pakistan in Rawalpindi, and my father was a physician. And I remember when I was in 4th grade, when we were listening to Sal. So somehow I get, they always rank you there. I was first, but I got a 96 in math. My dad was worried. Why? What about the 4 points? And that's all I kept on thinking. I was having like flashbacks. Like, you can be first, but what about the 4 points? But those 4 points somehow got me into Cadet College Hassan Abdal. Any Abdalians here in the room? Yay! That claims. and and really, growing up, it is about mastery. Sal was absolutely right. If you engage with the subject, if you engage with the profession, mastery does matter. But mastery also makes you fluent. And fluency, and once you have the fluency, be it in mathematics or be it in the languages or be it in your thinking, that opens up a lot of doors because then you can be the natural best yourself. And I talk a lot about it, which is a person should be able to live up to their potential. And to be able to live up to your potential, you have to take friction out of the way. And to make friction out of the way, it does require practice, it does require engagement, it does require constant learning. I think it's many of those things, but beyond all of that, I don't know if you've ever seen this film about the sushi chef, where every day this person all it does is, right, dream of sushi. But every day when he shows up, the sushi is going to prepare for his customers. It's going to be better than what he prepared the day before and the day before and the day before. So it's not about necessarily you're going to have a bigger title or you're going to have more money. It's about you attempt to be the best that day and better that day than the day before. Now, it probably does require work ethic. You got to show up, right? It does require commitment and vision because you got to enjoy it. Otherwise, how do you keep on doing the same thing? And you spoke of my career being in large companies, smaller companies as an entrepreneur. I lost Amra Tareen 10 million once, right there. She's always happy. And as a startup, right, I had a unicorn that we brought public, and then you're in the larger companies. But when you contextualize it, you're doing the same thing with the same joy. And if you have the joy of learning and experience, you can do well at any given stage. My first job that I had to do when I came to the US and actually pick up the dishes, or the first professional job, right? So I never had worked for money, right? And I come in, I went to Iowa State in Ames, Iowa for my computer engineering. And whatever money my grandma gave me, I realized very quickly it's not going to go far. the first job you go and you find it in the Memorial Union there, and you start scraping dishes. And some people get shocked, wow, you did that, right? I said, let me tell you about the housekeeping job I had in the summer after. But you realize the same thing, the ethic of work. I work for the Home Depot, the Fortune 18 company. We're 150 some billion in revenue last year reported. And in the executive suite of 10 people, 3 started in the front line in the stores. Anne Marie Campbell, she has now 400,000 people reporting to her. She's our EVP of stores and runs our Mexico and Canada division. She's from the Caribbean, Black woman, started as a cashier in the front lines. Hector Padilla, I was just with him yesterday. He's EVP of our pro business, which is half of our business. From the Dominican Republic, started carrying concrete and built some of our stores, like actually went and built the stores. Our EVP of merchandising, Jeff Kennard, he started selling lumber in a Canadian store. Why do I mention that? I can say, oh, I had a great journey, but I got inspiration from these peers of mine who even had a much, much tougher journey. And every day they provide inspiration for myself, for many others. And what you learn is you can contextualize stuff, but they had joy in it. Every morning when I meet Anne Marie Campbell in the executive suite, she's just as happy as Amra Tareen is all the time, right? And it matters, right? Attitude matters. And that shows that you're driven. Like, you have to learn the culture, the people, the life, and context of the life you're in. I think this adaptability does matter. And I think more than that, humility matters. At the Home Depot, we talk about the inverted pyramid. And you'll hear me talk a lot about the Home Depot because it is the best company I've ever worked for. It's a values-based culture. And in that, if you can let go of the ego, whether you're in a leadership situation or when your wife tells you that the dinner you just made and spent last 2 hours is not really good, it's okay. Things will be easier after that.
Okay. Yeah, now it's better. So you mentioned the CEO and the wife. So I'll let go of the wife comment. I don't want to go there. But the CEO, right? So there's something that the CEO of Home Depot has these sort of tenets for how he runs his company. And you've talked to me about those before. Would you mind talking about that and how that's impacted you as well?
So there's a great read. It's called Good Company. Arthur Blank, who was one of the founders of the Home Depot, recently wrote that book. And he speaks of values-based leadership. In Home Depot, which is now, right, what, 300 billion plus market cap company, when the founders started it, Bernie Marcus, who was older of the founders, was 50 years old. Arthur just celebrated his 80th birthday. This was like 44 years ago, so relatively farther along in their career. But they made a sense of codifying the company values. And I really think that now across 2,400 plus physical sites, meaning all our stores and distribution centers and all the support centers that we have, what really keeps the company together and what we call bleeding orange.
Do you guys see the socks, by the way? They're orange, by the way.
So what it keeps are those values. And one of those values is creating shareholder value. But the others have something and everything to do with the community, with how we interact with each other. And it's about building strong relationships, do the right thing, great customer service, right? Giving back, things that we do for each other, and how we really build sustainable companies. I used to think when I was younger, right, just build great technology, sell great technology, everything else will be okay. And really I've learned through my life iteration is, if you build strong relationships, if you build a values-based culture, and have a focus on your associates. And our founders say this, take care of your associates, they'll take care of the customers. and everything else takes care of itself. But that's something that is really what provides the foundation. Companies have to pivot. Companies have to evolve. But if you're grounded in the values, people will be there for you. We went through all of COVID. Our technology teams had to do the impossible, and then they went remote. And then we asked people, do you want to come back to work? And 57% said, no, not at all. And except for 7%, everybody else said, maybe once or twice a week or a month, and don't tell me which days. So, but concurrently, our engagement score for 2 years for employee engagement score in technology was 91%. What did we do? We just went remote forever. We are done with that debate. We didn't go write a big placards about it. We just did the right thing. And so now we are hiring nationally. So those Twitter people who don't have a job, they can apply with me. And then they don't have to move, right? And they don't have to come in. They just have to do good work.
So 10,000 people working remotely requires the leader to have a very keen sense of culture and have a level of empathy that you clearly have. But it cannot have started at Home Depot. It must have started before, right? And prior to you being CIO at here at Home Depot and Staples, you've been part of startups. How did that work out? Right? What was empathy and culture like at the startups you were at? Because one of those startups ended up going public, and apparently you lost $10 million, but one of them went public. Talk about that a little bit. How did you do the right thing as it relates to culture in the startups that you were a leader at?
The startups, the funny thing is that at times you're just trying to find your way. And I mentioned, because we can all talk about our success, I kind of will posit that you don't learn much from your success because you just don't do a retrospective enough on a success, which maybe we should, but I don't think we are trained to do a retrospective on success. Retrospective on failure is pretty easy because you're pretty lonely after failure, and you have a lot of time. And I learned after the one thing which we had done, we actually had built a pretty cool device and networking device, and it worked. But we did not have empathy for our customer to know what did they really need. And we did not do a good job at teasing out what that MVP would be and how it will best go to market. And after that, customer-backed journeys became important for me. It became important for me to not be that deterministic and be more agile around understanding that from the initial hypothesis, how we can quickly understand, reflect, and execute. And so when we actually worked on this company, Intralinks, where I was head of product technology engineering, was one of the earliest SaaS companies. And the interesting thing was they had built the first platform. They were trying to build the second platform. And I'm going to go a bit deep into it, but the FDIC would use that platform to take over banks. And this was right before the 2009-10 crisis. And I started there in January of 2008, and I had a customer call. It was one of the regulators of FDIC. And they said, well, we take over banks using this platform, then we sell it to other banks, da, da, da. I said, how do you know who's going to buy? Because you take a bank, and there are 300 potential banks that can buy this bank. Oh, I go on this one folder, I look at this contracts document, and if somebody has looked at it, I pick up the phone, call them. I said, well, so would you like to get an email if when somebody clicks on that? That'll be just great. And then all these banks start collapsing, and I put that feature in, of course. All these banks start collapsing. We became the platform that FDIC and the Federal Reserve used through that financial crisis. And really, that became the most important thing that made this company go public. That was just that one sentence. That's customer empathy.
So you caused the financial crisis.
I just helped the country come out of it.
But talk about that. Look, one of the things that, inshallah, for myself, I want to go ring the bell at some point, right? You did that.
I'm sorry?
The Ring the Bell, a
Ring the
company
Bell.
went public.
I was there.
How was that experience, and how did that change the company that was a startup that became a big company? Did the culture stay the same? Was there anything different about the company after that?
And the most important thing that happens after you ring the bell, you are now accountable to your board, of course, but to stockholders who don't know you. When the board members are in the room and they are the investors, you can have the conversation. And there's possibly even forgiveness if the quarter did not go as well, because they're in it for the long term. In a public company, it's very disciplined. And we had to learn that discipline. And it took a few years of that to get that discipline in, which is, if you say you're going to perform a certain way, a certain quarter, people don't want surprises. And introducing that discipline of execution where you understand your pipeline, you understand your deal flow, you understand what you're going to close, you understand your expenses, and to be able to tabulate it, predict it, project it for that quarter and for the year becomes important, key, and critical. Now, it's not about just which features did you get out there, how many people did you bring in. You have to smooth things out to manage them, to manage the sentiment of the market, where most of those people, unless you're closely held, don't know you. They just know you through whatever they heard on Kramer. And if Kramer doesn't like you, maybe you're not going to do as well.
So many sort of twists and turns, all positive clearly, but eventually you decided, yeah, I don't want to do the startup thing anymore. What happened there? Was it that? Was it a beautiful opportunity at Staples? How did that come about?
No, honestly, not that I didn't want to do startup or the other way. I grew up in large companies, and I grew up in telecom, and I was fortunate enough that I had great mentors. And I was speaking yesterday at Google. I said, mentors matter, but champions matter a lot more. And finding the right champions matters. And so I was a CIO early on for Time Warner Telecom and ICG Telecom and so on. And everybody has a gift, and I do understand and had learned and had great mentors who taught me how to execute at software at scale. And I speak of living up to the potential. So it's one thing to have inventions with very deep knowledge in a product. It's another to work through enterprise software at scale, where today I have 5,000 people who write code every day. Could be a bit more or less, but.
Maybe not on Saturday.
I'm sorry?
Just kidding.
But so that scale of execution is something that's just amazing to me. It's like painting at this huge canvas where every detail matters, but it's that beautiful canvas of what you can paint at. And I wanted that opportunity again.
So yesterday evening, we were having a conversation with Fahim, and the topic of DLP came up with Yasser. And there was a twinkle in Fahim's eye as he was talking about some patents he's filed back in the day. That's why I was really curious since that moment. Clearly, you enjoy the process of invention, but then sounds like you have over time figured out that to you, what is even more important is this notion of scale, right? And that's why you are where you are. You've really kind of you've threaded that needle, because invention usually is something you do in a corner for the most part, right? You kind of sit in a corner and say, that's an interesting idea. But then you've threaded the needle between that and somehow scale at a company the size of a Home Depot. That's my observation,
yes.
If you agree or not.
What is scale? Scale is, in technology, is abstraction. A business at scale as a Home Depot, where we are now third largest supply chain by cube in North America. We are the fifth largest e-commerce website and certainly one of the largest retailers. Our problems and our opportunities are at that scale. But you have to be able to abstract it still in a conversation. How will we solve our customer's problem of appliance returns? That's a very specific question. And it does scale out across hundreds of distribution centers and tens to hundreds of vendors. And I was at a distribution center week before last, and the problem of returns was, and you can read on all the papers, but unless you really go there and see, after something gets returned and it comes to our distribution center, the pickup truck from a Samsung or LG or GE or whoever we got it from does not show up till they really feel that they will carry enough of a load back. But what does that do? That consumes a significant part of our distribution center. And now we can't get more product in and other bad things happen. I'm just giving you an example of very precise, specific view that in a very large company somebody has to solve for. You have to be able to abstract from that large customer back point of view to that specific problem. And then somebody will find the answer. I don't spend time now trying to come up with that patent. I've learned, and I learned it significantly when I did this MBA about 10, 11 years ago. Asking the hard question and the right question is the most difficult, but the most important thing. Somebody will find the answer. Generally, people don't even remember the Nobel Prize winner's name who came up with the answer to somebody's hard problem, generally. But if somebody poses a hard problem that goes across years or centuries, they'll remember that name. And even Einstein was wrong, as proven this year. This year's physics Nobel Prize was actually around how quantum physics proves that Einstein's view on that specific area was wrong. So the smartest person that we probably have heard of, right, was also wrong, against which somebody gets a Nobel Prize. But we still remember Einstein's name. I don't remember, I'm sorry, those three people's name that got that.
Yeah, with that haircut, I don't know, man. I don't know about that guy. So maybe we'll turn a little bit and ask because you said ask the hard questions, I'll ask a hard question. What do you think you did wrong along the way?
I think I'll carry it into the same thing around education. And I talk about it. In fact, you kind of brought me to that. What Sal was talking about earlier. When we were going to school in Pakistan, what happened? Even before, the smartest kid who was acknowledged, and I was not one of them, was the one who leaped out of their chair with the answer before the question even came out of the teachers, right? Somewhere, let me have the answer. I wish I had learned to listen before attempting to answer. I wish I had taken the time to not formulate the answer, but listen to the question with insight and empathy. And I believe had I done that, many things would have gone much better.
What is better, man? You're doing great.
Listen, it's about how you affect everybody else through the journey. If you're, and I'm certain I've been inconsiderate through my journey. I'm certain I've been wrong many, many times, I'm sure. And it's okay if you fail. There's nothing wrong with failing. It's wrong with if you failed because you had information accessible to you, but you did not take the time to consider it.
Wow, we've gone through this fast. So do we now need to stop and go to the questions, or may I ask one more question? One or two or three or four? A few. Okay. All right. Thank you, Barbara. So look, we've talked about culture a lot. We've talked about how you think about people around you a lot. And I'll tell you one other thing that stood out for me the first time I spoke with Fahim was in the very first conversation, we talked about families. And we talked about, yes, our own families, we want to have impact on them, we want them to do well. But then we also ended up talking about sort of the broader community and what we should be doing for them, right? What are we doing to pay it forward, as it were? Right? As you think about it, and now that Babar said we're done for the day, could you talk about that a little bit? I mean, how do you see yourself? You're a South Asian, you're a leader, you are you are at this point, I think it's sort of incumbent on you to be an example. You don't have a choice. You have to be a good example, right? Which means it's a good example to your children, who have clearly done very well, as you have shared. And if you'd like to share a little bit, I'd appreciate that. And then what are you doing to be an example to others around you?
I think a critical thing, and here it's all open, but I do see participation from people of different ethnicities and hopefully countries other than people of Pakistan, Indian, South Asian origin. I think important to have influence. We certainly need to pay back people and be role models to people who are more like us. But it's also sometimes convenient and easy, right? And there's this just easy energy because we speak the same way and it feels right. I think the integration, and for children the same way, the integration into the wider community, integration and connection and leadership roles where one is viewed as giving back locally. I was with the Home Depot team and we actually cleaned up 7 homes and repainted them and built decks and all day before yesterday with 300 of us in west side of Atlanta. I sit on the board of Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and I co-chair their DE&I council that we started. Those things are a matter for influence and integration and also for storytelling and connection. A lot of folks ask me, how do you move up and all? And I'm like, it's not just about doing the technology. It's also being able to tell the story in context of the local stories. And if you've never read a story, you're never going to tell a story.
So part of the Atlanta Symphony, so many different things. Maybe we'll close the questions from myself, at least on this point, which is, look, we live here. So we're not Pakistani, we're not Indian, we're Pakistani American, Indian American, etc. Right? How do you distinguish between the two? Right? We all have two identities, right? But perhaps the more important identity, the one that should be dominant, is the Pakistani American, Indian American identity, because we live here. What are your thoughts on that?
I think most people in US, a significant amount of people in US have hyphenated identities, right? So hyphenated identity is a real thing, and if it's not hyphenated, it's ethnic, like in Black American, right? What it means. One has to be very clear and very about the attributes and of what that means, and be connected with your culture, your society, and so that also for the children, right? Not to be lost, like who am I? But then give them the choice to be who they best want to be. Right? When my son went to college, all his roommates at Lehigh moved off campus. Everybody was an Indian, right? That's the identity he chose to connect with, and that's what he enjoyed, right? Being with. My daughter has friends from 50 countries, and she has her own specific, more specific identity. So I think the important thing is to be very clear about connecting, understanding, and then the identity will evolve over time. And then it will evolve to have influence at a global level. I think most important, I have a professor from Cadet College, Professor Mahfouz, and he's very well renowned and very influential from that. And he said he's got a school in Narowal, girls' school, and like I'm teaching those children to be citizens of the world. And that's most important. And I think that's where we are moving to.
So final question, I promise, Sarva. What do you think the community here, open, broadly, South Asian community, what should we do better so that we can truly pay it forward? For not just for people who come from outside, right? People who are born here.
I think just like we are bringing the children in and children entrepreneurs in, I think paying it forward means creating a fundamental platform for support. The more we can help each other, the more everybody can be. The more confidence we can give each other, the more we can be. And it just takes your time. It doesn't take that much time either. I mentor many people, champion some of them. And I find that people find their time, but you have to tell people it'll be okay. They'll be all right. And once they have the confidence, they can do anything.
So with that mentorship point, so you can line up for the mentorship, or just the questions for now. Does anybody have any questions? So that's my seated question right there from Yasser. Go ahead, Yasser.
Great chat, by the way. A question on the remote work and management style, like in terms of thinking about incentives, which have worked for smaller companies when you were in a startup versus larger companies when your role is a bit more abstracted from a management side. And how do you measure performance when people are not coming in the office, and how's that evolved in the last few years for you?
as we have seen engagement, and we don't just measure engagement, we also measure leadership behavior. I think it starts with the leadership behavior of inspiration. The single most things that's correlated most with job engagement is inspiration. Inspiration comes from a place of understanding, recognition, feedback. Do I know what I'm working on and why I'm working on it? Did you tell me how am I doing? Did you celebrate me if I was succeeding at it? Or did you let me know if I was not doing as well? If that connection is there, great stuff happens. Performance just happens.
So you mentioned the importance of storytelling. Can you expand on how do we become?
I'm sorry, I cannot understand you.
So you mentioned the importance of storytelling and how important it is for your career. Can you expand upon how do we become good storytellers?
Sure. So if you look back, be it the best priests or the Maulvis or the best politicians, what do? They inspire by telling a story. And you get better at storytelling, I believe, by reading literature, fiction, history, biographies, read. And then you will develop your own point of view and perspective, because it has to be grounded not in your some random opinion, but in the wisdom of others, in the knowledge of others.
Great. That was a great answer. Yeah, storytelling is so important in all of our jobs. Doesn't matter what you do. So it's a great skill to acquire over time. And I'm being told we are actually out of time. So really, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Great honest.
Thank you. Thank you
Very
for
nice.
listening. Appreciate it.
Great doing
Thank
this with you. Thank you all.